perhaps it was their appreciation for things beyond this world that caused a certain group of people in ancient, what we would now call Mesopotamia, that area, to come together and to pool their resources and to try and reach outward and upward and beyond to touch the heavens. Maybe it was that they had experienced something in their spirits that made them realize that there is something beyond, that there's something else out there, that there's someone else out there with whom they wanted to be in contact. And maybe that's what was going through their minds when the people got together in this barren, arid land and collected rocks and tar and began to build a tower to the heavens. Story of the Tower of Babel, it's what we call it. This morning we're going to find out that it's much more than just a story about a tower or a building. The passage is from Genesis 11. This is the last week in our series called Beginnings, in which we have talked about the first few chapters of the book of Genesis. And the passage is only 9 verses out of the entire book of Genesis, out of the entire Bible, but over and over again, the Tower of Babel is referred to in Scripture. Now, it seems to me that if that's the case, there must be something worth learning from the story other than some people built a tower and God knocked it down, which is what we usually come away with in our Sunday school churchified mentality. Beginning in verse 1. At one time, all the peoples of the world spoke the same language, and they used the same words. As the people migrated to the east, they found a plain in the land of Babylonia, and they settled there. They began saying to each other, "Let's make bricks and harden them with fire." In this region, bricks were used instead of stone, and tar was used for mortar. And they said, "Come, let's build a great city for ourselves with a tower that reaches to the sky. This will make us famous, keep us from being scattered all over the world." But the Lord came down to look at the city and the tower the people were building. "Look," he said, "the people are united. They all speak the same language. After this, nothing they set out to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us. Let's go down and confuse the people with different languages. Then they won't be able to understand each other." And in that way, the Lord scattered them all over the world. They stopped building the city. This is why the city was called Babel, because that is where the Lord confused the people with different languages. And in this way, he scattered them all over the world. Kind of another crazy story from the book of Genesis, isn't it? I mean, just think about it for a minute. It's just kind of crazy. People get together, make some bricks, start building a building, and as the legend has it, as the story has it, God comes down and knocks it down. And as I said, the focus is generally on the Tower of Babel. But if you notice, the tower is only mentioned briefly in the account. So just a little bit of that 9 verses is dedicated to the tower itself. They're building a city, and within the city is a tower because they want the tower to be famous, and they want to reach to the heavens. Okay, the Tower of Babel summarized. What goes up must come down. Pride goes before the fall. It's spiritual gravity. What goes up must come down. And selfishness and pride always produce confusion and chaos. Selfishness wrecks far more marriages than adultery. Selfishness and pride break up business partnerships and cause wars. And the obvious question that we want to ask is this: are we building towers of Babel, or spires pointing to God's direction. Thomas Aquinas said there are at least 6 Hebrew words for the word pride, all of them translatable by the phrase to be high, to lift one's self up above another. All of them sub-translatable with words like arrogance and loftiness and presumptuousness and boasting. So there's danger then in building the wrong sort of tower. So we're going to look at several dangers of Babel this morning. First of all, if you'll look closely, there's really this danger of self-reliance, and we hesitate to even talk about that because we're raised in a culture where self-reliance is esteemed, isn't it? I mean, when we see people standing on the roadway with a sign saying we'll work for food, we go, yeah, right, get a job. We expect people to have some self-reliance, but there's obviously danger. They began saying to each other, let's make some bricks, harden them with fire. Anybody a fan of the Rocky movies? Remember all the way back to high school years? I came out of the Rocky movies wanting to go pick a fight with somebody. I mean, you know, the biggest guy in the crowd. Fortunately, it didn't happen. 2006, Sylvester Stallone remade Rocky again with another Rocky movie, maybe the final Rocky movie. That's yet to be seen. But it was also an interesting year for him because it was a year in which he reconnected with his Christian faith. And as he was being interviewed about this one time, he said, you know, my Christian faith played a big part in the first Rocky movie. He said, I wrote that out of some expression of my faith. He said, I was raised in a Catholic home, Christian home. I went to Catholic schools. I was taught the faith. Went as far as I could with it until one day I got out into the so-called real world and I was presented with temptation. And I lost my way. And I made a lot of bad choices. But Stallone says that those bad choices left him ultimately unsatisfied, especially his decision to put fame and career ahead of his family. And as a result, he was increasingly pulled back to his Christian heritage. He said, the more I go to church, the more I turn myself over to the process of believing in Jesus and listening to his word, having him guide my hand, I feel as though the pressure is off of me now. As a part of his transformation, Stallone realizes that part of the problem that he faced was self-reliance. Again, you never thought you'd hear Sylvester Stallone quoted in the Methodist Church, did you? As a model. He says you need to have the expertise and guidance of someone else. You cannot train yourself. And I feel the same way about the Christian faith, about what the church is. The church is the gym of the soul. I don't know, man, that's pretty profound. From a guy who said, Adrian, on the big screen. We come by this self-reliance naturally due we westernized Americans. We come by it because we're supposed to what? Pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, right? Man up. Be a man. You know, shoulder your responsibility, nose to the grindstone, shoulder to the wheel, all that stuff that we're told, and to some degree, it's true from a young age. But friends, just because it comes naturally doesn't mean that's the way believers are supposed to live, because you and I are supposed to be living by supernatural power, not by what comes naturally. Francis Schaeffer said of the story of Babel, beginnings of secular humanism started here. Never thought of it that way. The beginnings of secular humanism started here. Let's make a name for ourselves so that we can maintain a human unity as we achieve and establish our reputation. Notice, if you will, how God acts in the situation. He says, let us. In other words, he's talking to the Godhead. Let us go down, confound their language. Okay? Notice here that